So it is my pleasure to welcome to the stage director Arthur Borman, actors Michael Riley, who plays Clyde Walton, and Stephen Rappaport, who plays producer Marvin Handelman. So it's great seeing you guys over here. This is the first time you've seen each other in how long? How long has it been since you've...
30 years.
All right, no, this is wonderful. So, I mean, this is the first time you've also seen it on the screen since what? Since the 90s or any other? All right.
Yeah.
No, this is great. I got to say, when I was watching the ending of that film, where the intent and the purpose of putting this film together and making And God Spoke throughout the course of the film actually did not pan out the way that that Clive and Marvin wanted it to end up, but it ended up becoming a cult classic in its own right for entirely different purposes. And that really reminds me of today, the kind of the cult following that a film like The Room has with Tommy Wiseau. So I guess, I mean, just, can you comment on, it just seems like some foreshadowing with that.
Well, actually, that is exactly what happened with The Room. It's like now people go so they can make, fun of that film as a comedy, which is not how it was intended at all. But what I noticed about this movie that is relevant is after this film came out, it had a life on VHS and DVD, and it became sort of like a cult film, and people knew the lines and could quote the lines. And so in a weird way, truth being, stranger than fiction, exactly what happened in this film is what, the story was, which is it sort of took a life of its own in a different direction later on. So I think it's actually kind of cool. Watching actually even that last scene of them answering questions, I thought, oh my God, they're about to get on a stage and do the same thing.
So I guess let's just start from the beginning. I mean, how did the idea for this film come about? Just creating a mockumentary.
Well, I actually, the mockumentary idea came from the fact that I was a big fan of This Is Spinal Tap. And my brother and I, Mark, by the way, is here. Mark, wave. Mark actually is one of the producers of the film. Who is here today. We had come up with an idea. We wanted to do a Spinal Tap-ish idea, and I used to, when I was in film school, work a lot of jobs. I was a PA on a lot of big budget flops, and it was always like a disaster, and I would get to be in all these great moments of horrible movies, and I thought, we should write something like that we can put together that just sort of encapsulates a big epic movie that's just a disaster, but all the comic behind the scenes of it. And sticking a Bible idea was just a way to sort of poke fun at the seriousness of everything all the time. That's what that is. Yeah, I kind of thought about that because you had so many different source material to choose from. Just how did you come across deciding, let's do a mockumentary about the Bible of all books? And so it just happenstance that you just ended up choosing that book that everybody... Yeah, I just felt like that would be right for the most amount of humor. I wanted something that people go, okay, I already know the stories of it, so now we don't have to tell you the stories. All you got to do is you got to just see Moses, and you're like, okay, I know the story. I know where this is going to go. So then we can already make fun of the scene. So Michael and Stephen, this is going to be hard because I might end up calling you Clive and Marvin throughout the thing. But for you, how did you get cast into this project, and what drew you to it?
We were talking about that this morning. Different views of the cast. Because you had said it was over 2 days. My memory was it was 1 day, but my overarching memory was meeting this guy, because at that time we were they were pairing up Clive's and Marvin's, and I just remember there was a bunch of pairings all over the place, and then you and I sat down, and as soon as we sat there, we kind of were able to kind of rip off of each other because homework collided, and it was a chemistry right away, which was great.
I remember eating grapes during the... Only because I was hungry, though.
I see a film like this, and all the problems with the budget, but in reality, what kind of a budget did you have just making the mockumentary, and how long did it take to shoot the film?
Well, again, thanks to my brother and Rich Radden, it was a $250,000 budget, which at the time, for an independent film, we felt like it was a lot of money. The whole movie, however, did come together really quickly. It seemed like from the idea we had to getting the script and to getting the money, it came together fairly quickly. And then it was shot over only 3 weeks. So it's like all of this stuff that was done, where they're shooting the film, whether it's the Garden of Eden or the Jesus or the Moses or the Noah scene, all of that was shot in just 1 week. Like every single day, we just did a different scene. And then for the next 2 weeks, we shot all the pre-production stuff and the post-production stuff and all that other stuff. So we were lightning fast. I think it was 19 days was all we had to shoot it.
Which was kind of crazy. One of the things that was good for us about that is that because it took place on a set, as soon as you arrived in the car to wherever we were shooting, you had to consider yourself like on camera as soon as you got there. So during lunch or whatever, like we just kind of had to hang out in that all day, which was great actually.
Yeah, I thought that what we did is we would a lot of like cutaways and stuff was we'd see something interesting and we would just roll.
Yeah.
So even while we're setting up the next shot, we roll on something else, and then when you put it all together, it just looks like, wow, there's a lot going on here.
I mean, were you in character the entire time? I guess because like the humor in the film seems so natural and spontaneous, and of course the question I have watching it again, I mean, for the umpteenth time, is how much of it was scripted, or how much of it was did the script form a template, and how much of it was just improvised. And like I have this image in my head that you're just, a lot of it is structure, but a lot of it is just you going around capturing whatever you can capture. Sometimes you guys are in character and you're just catching things off the cuff, as they happen sometimes.
Yeah, I would say that it was quite structured, but that liberated the improvisational aspect of it, that there was a structure.
And it's funny because when it was 26 years ago, but it's when I think of the things that I can't remember anymore the things that were scripted and the things that were improvised, because the script was so spontaneous and improvisational, and then the improv kind of had the other quality. So now I just don't even remember certain things.
Right. I think the one thing that I remember that we did is we had a script, and we would always shoot the script, and then we would then always, after that, now let's do one where we can play around and add more things to it. And the same thing would happen when we would do like the interviews with people. We would shoot the dialogue, and then I would just, is my voice doing like those, questions and stuff. And then I would just keep asking questions to see what else we could get out of it. So you're right, when you look at it now, I'm like, I don't actually remember what was a line and what was like an added. I felt like we had a lot of happy accidents too, and like a couple of cutaways and reaction shots where I was like, oh, that just worked.
Yeah.
But you're right, if I dug up the script now, it would probably look, like 60% in there and 40% isn't, or maybe it's 50-50, I don't even know.
Yeah.
I think certainly one of the questions, right, because I remember when I saw this, obviously you guys got cameos from Lou Ferrigno, Eve Plum, Soupy Sales, and then people who I think after the fact became stars in their own right, Andy Dick and Chris Kattan, if anybody knows Chris Kattan at the very end. So I guess how did you get Soupy and Eve and like Lou Ferrigno to agree to working on this film?
I believe it was Mark, my brother, and Rich, the producers, we were looking to get just some cameos to see what we could get, and they were able to get Lou Ferrigno and Soupy Sales. I think maybe Soupy actually had been a friend of a friend somehow, and we were able to get a connection to him. Eve came because the actor who played the first AD, Michael Hitchcock, who was like, I play cards with Eve Plum. You want me to bring her to the set? And I said, yeah, bring her like on Tuesday. We're going to shoot this Noah's Ark thing, and we'll just stick her in there and see what we can do. With other actors like Chris Kattan or actually Michael Hitchcock, who would go on to do a lot of the Christopher Guest ones, and Andy Dick. They weren't famous yet. I mean, we didn't know that they would become famous. In fact, the lower third we give to Andy Dick is a different name because he wasn't famous. There was, now I just have him be who he was because I think he's recognizable.
I actually noticed a lot of the names that you gave people, and I don't know if it was intentional, but your craft services guy was Russell Johnson, and I kept thinking of the professor from Gilligan's Island, and I don't know if that was intentional or not.
I don't even know where those names came from. I kind of feel like we had a bunch, but we played with it. And I think in post we might have made up some names too.
I love Frank Post.
Was that?
It might have been. I don't know. I also noted we gave a lot of women a lot of masculine names in that. Also, I think like
Charlie Rose and
right. And there was a girl named Cliff with the animals, and I'm like, yeah.
Well, let's see right now. Let's just take a small break from my questions. Does anybody have a question in the audience that they'd like to ask?
Thanks. I have very fond memories of seeing a screening of this movie in the little room of Raleigh Studios, and people stayed through to the end. My opinion, one thing I really love about the film is that it actually captures this really pathetic reality of these hapless, low-budget producers. And it works almost on a dramatic level beyond being a mockumentary, which is another reason I love the film. Was that important for you to get the kind of drama of these characters?
You talking to me? Well, I think that the fact that they were so passionate about what they were making, you had to buy that, because you're going to be like, okay, you're seeing as a viewer, like, oh my God, what they're making is sort of terrible, and it's like we're slowly parsing out like information that you're like, that's not a good choice, that's not a good choice. But if they were passionate and they believed in what they were doing and they believed in the art of it, and the hope was you go along for the ride of what it is, because that people go out there and make a movie. It is true. I think even today, there's millions of dollars and people don't necessarily know. You make a great movie and you're telling everybody it's great. In the back of your mind is this working? I don't know. So I think it's a very common thing, and I think that this movie was trying to just play on this delusion, I guess. So you go into this with an idea, and you just got to be all in, regardless of how it goes, which I think is how all movies kind of are made still.
And Stephen and I knew, unless you took the premise dead seriously, it wouldn't have a hope of having anything funny in it. So yeah, that was certainly for Clive. I kind of thought, he's one of those guys that had read every film book, but had digested none of it. So he had all the things in there, but he just didn't know his way out of anything.
It's another, you bring up a good point, because I kept thinking, it's that scene where you're calling the apostles, and Clive starts having to, he has to stop and starts counting, and I'm thinking, here they are making a film about the Bible, and yet they're not exactly sure how many apostles or disciples, there are. And how many times have we seen, or have I seen a movie that just, didn't really get the source material right? Even to the fact where you had to call out to a Bible for a Bible and no one had a Bible on set. So, I think it's such a funny kind of a funny piece. So, the idea of just not being truthful to the source. You, on the other hand, you were always very adamant, right? I think one of your lines was, I don't want it to be theologically fraudulent. So you always tried to make it. But were there any kind of past experiences with seeing films done that necessarily weren't true to the source material that kind of inspired that in this film?
I don't necessarily know if it was if there's any other films like that, but I just felt that everyone, if you've been to sort of Sunday school and you know the basic Bible stories, everybody sort of has it in their head as to what's going on. So I felt like there was just creative license to say whatever we could come up with that was, going to be funny and interesting. That's what we were going to do. If we were going to, do the burning bush, we didn't have to even set up the story. We just had the pyrotechnics guy goes, oh, there's going to be some fire burning in the bush, and I'm hoping the viewer's like, oh, I know what scene that is because I went, from my own knowledge of, Bible stories. So then taking that, anything you did that twisted that, already believed in that. So I don't think it was necessarily trying to get the Bible right or wrong. I think we were just taking what people's expectation of biblical, moments were and twisting them.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys feel that the film exaggerated the absurdities of Hollywood, or is it closer to the truth than we think?
What do you think, guy?
I think it treads a fine line, for sure. I think when you've been in enough sets and you kind of go, there's an airport radar at the threshold of every set, and you don't always. If you had to cross it when people hadn't read the script or you would end up in a lot of empty sets, I think.
I do think, though, that, you know, people have then seen this movie and been on sets and been like, and then they're like, my God, this is a moment like right out of Van God Spoke. So it's like there is that, you know, a bit that, as far fetched as this is, there's moments that you go, oh my God, this is actually happening, and it's you know, to us now.
I always loved those different departments when we would see screenings, like the grips would laugh at the grip stuff, and the transport guys would laugh at the transport stuff. I always thought that was great.
I always think, you know, also when I'm watching this, the kind of I guess the kind of the adherence to perfection, the kind of self-inflated egos that some of the characters in the film have. So, and of course, there's always that tension between Clive, the auteur, the director, and Marvin, who is just trying to be on budget. But even like someone like Armand Albiach, you know, who just describes the baking of bread with that kind of, you know, smirky, you know, pleasure, or Charlie Rose, the casting director, and even your production designer, who just brings out the pieces of the arc and sniffs the pieces of wood like they were fine wine. So, you know, again, I feel like, were these, I mean, you made the film, so like, were these inspired by kind of any background?
Specifically, I was a PA on a movie called Masters of the Universe. This was like 1986 or something, and it was a really big budget canon movie based on the He-Man real life, and actually many things like that did happen. We did have a day where I saw the screening room and the entire thing was black, and again, I get to be a PA and I get to sit in the back, and I thought that's pretty funny. I don't know, you know. And some of the ideas in the movie were things that I actually saw happen on that, like that. But I was looking at it as a new guy who just moved to LA, who was on his first movie as a PA, and you come on to a big movie and you're thinking all these people are artists and geniuses and know everything, and then you're just realizing, oh, everybody is just trying to figure this out. Nobody really knows what they're doing. And then just see that play out.
So Stephen and Clive, I want to kind of get back to you. Stephen and Clive, I can't believe I said that. I did exactly what I said I was going to do. Stephen and Michael, prior to making this film, what were you doing in the industry? What had you done before? And where did you see kind of things go after the making of this film? Because how did you get to Sweden? And you were in Toronto, and just kind of describe your career after that.
I'm a theater live performing kind of guy. And I was doing one-man shows and touring them before I went to LA, and figured I'd go to LA, get a reputation, and then I could have a greater audience for my own work, didn't work. But it was interesting. I was seen by Mary Claire the casting director, right when I came to town. I was asked to do a, what is it called? Showcase performance, right? And there was all these scripts that we could choose from, and no one wanted this one where I took the script and I had this affair with a salmon. And we use a live salmon, I'm not a live salmon, a dead salmon, as a puppet. And I got calls from every agent in town. So that's how I got there. And afterwards, I'm a live performer, preferably, and teacher.
And teacher of acting.
Yeah, I do these intensive workshops where I work with all sorts of people, a lot of performers, sometimes policemen, lawyers, priests, performers.
How about
don't know. I lived here in LA between 90 and 98, and did small parts in big films and larger parts in smaller films that were never seen. And to be honest, it was things like this. It was like, And God Spoke is up there for me because it was just one of those labors of love where we had, like you say, 3 weeks, and you're just in the trenches and working with artists of like mind, and that to me is always the juicy stuff. Like I said aye sir on a Steven Spielberg movie, and and was around those kind of sets, but it was things like this that, if I could make 3 films like this where we had 2 or 3 weeks to prepare, and then we were going to come in and just do it like that, and no trailer, just arrive into your car, everyone, I would do that for sure, but yeah, wouldn't know how to encapsulate it much after that.
So when we were trying to promote this, screening, I guess word got out because other people involved in the film heard about it, and I don't know how many are here, but I do want to acknowledge, your brother is here. I also know a gentleman named Noah is here, who was, I believe, set designer, especially prop guy. So what I'd like to do is, I kind of want to acknowledge, because if we have people involved in the film, is there anybody over here in the audience that was actually involved in the making of the film? I see. So I want to apologize, and let me all stand up if you can. And honestly, so Colin, could you help me with the mic? Would you be willing to just kind of describe briefly what your role was in the film and what you did? And if you have any little anecdotes from your time on the film, that'd be great.
Hi, my name is Philip, and we were a management company that sent some actors to your casting calls, and so we provided a couple of day players. Louise, the gay makeup artist, is the one who made it.
This is my wife. We actually met. We've been married for 25 years ago. We met at the Sundance Film Festival with this premiere.
For this film? What a great story.
What I like is how much Mark is actually in the film. When I watch the film, I'm like, Mark is walking around the background like almost every scene, which is hilarious. I was a disciple with sunglasses on. The only reason I was in the film was because I had a beard at the time. It was an actual beard. And I know Arthur from school, and Arthur called me up and said, "Do you still have your beard?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Don't shave it and meet us out at this lake." And I didn't know what was going on. I had no idea what was going on.
Hey, I'm Noah. I built a lot of the sets that you saw in the film, and I did a lot of the specialty props, like the Ten Commandment tablets that are set right there. What's funny is that, so the way I ended up working on this production, Joseph Timfes, who was the production coordinator of the film, his best friend, Zelda Hacker, was a gal that I was dating at the time, so she was a costume person. I was a special effects artist. I worked on a bunch of films, and we kind of got wrapped into this film, which it's amazing to see how far this film has gone. It's nice to see that there's still like a love for this film, I think, and it's funny. So how I found out about the screening was a buddy of mine who I brought in to help build the sets with me. He told me about it, and I'm like, oh my God. And then he's like, it's been 30 years. And I'm like, oh my God. So I told my daughter, who's here, and I'm like, do you want to come see this film? And she may not look very enthusiastic right now, but she was very happy. She's like, I want to see this. And so a couple of things I can tell you real quick about it. So on the tablets, I was given this task to create these tablets as one of the props, and I'm like, okay, well, I got to design this thing. So I looked at the Ten Commandments tablets, and I'm like, all right, I'll model the writing after that. But the second set, I'm like, what am I going to do? Oh, and on the first set that has the Ten Commandment tablets, my initials are actually in it backwards. But the second set of the second tablet, I'm like, well, what am I going to do? I'm not going to repeat it. So I got this harebrained idea to basically hide a message into it. So if you go back and pause the film, if you have a DVD copy or happen to stream it, it actually says, "Help being held captive in a tablet factory for the Lord." And what's crazy about that is that Arthur, you had no clue about this, and I'm like, oh no, maybe I should say something. I don't want to get in trouble. And so I ended up telling Joseph about it and some of the other people. And so at the screening, much like, I guess, Stephen, you were saying, like, the grips are laughing at this and the art department's laughing at this. So that scene comes on, and there they are, as big as life on the screen, being held captive. And I'm like, ah, shit. And everybody's laughing, and everybody's like, why is everybody laughing? I think eventually, Joseph told you what it said on it. And I think the funny thing about that is much like this film, happy accident, and I think it makes the film even better if you know about it. And then last of all, I'm actually in the film too. I'm the crazy kid at the end dancing with the... Yeah, Joseph's like, we need extras. I'm like, no. But yeah, but this, I gotta say, all the films I've worked on, this is definitely one of the best films I think I've worked on. And you're right, it was quick, and it was a lot of fun. A lot of chaos too. Like, I remember at one point I told the thing about the Noah's Ark. There was some crazy stuff that was going on with that. So, but it's all fun, and I think this was great. Oh yeah, by the way, Michael and Stephen, a lot of your wardrobe, that was my wardrobe. Like your ties and some of your shirts, because Zelda, she's like, I'm raiding your closet. We need all this stuff. I'm like, all right.
Do you still have that blue plaid?
I do. I have a lot of your ties still. The Salvador Dali tie, that I still have that tie. So it's a nice little memory of walking down memory lane and everything. So, but yeah, thank you. This was a great film.
And the only thing after you beat the phone and build up to 12. So that was perfect. That was a line I just caught. Does anybody else have another question while we're... So we have a few. So let's take it. Let's start over here, and then we have a couple up there.
All right. Hello. I love this movie. My dad showed it to me because I'm a church worker, and I love all the religious jokes. My husband and I die every time. So I really wanted to know from our actors. So you were saying that there was a structure with this film, and that kind of helped those funny moments come through. I wanted to know if there were any points or scenes that you changed your delivery because of something you saw in your producers or your director. Just maybe it's something they said or some way they acted, and you were like, oh, I'm going to use that. I was curious if that ever came up.
I don't remember. But he's younger than I am, so...
I don't, like I said before, some of the improv things and some of the script was great in terms of, there was a structure there, as Stephen said, that there was so much, once you had the character in place, there was a lot of freedom to play around within the structure of those things. So even here, I haven't seen the film for like 26 years or something. Matthew, Peter, Paul, Mary, no, Mary's not.
Yeah.
And under Clive's breath, he says, that's a folk band. These little things like that I just remember. And I don't know whether the prayer around the thing, I seem to remember.
You wrote that.
I think I wrote that. Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But I don't remember specifically. But you spend a lot of time on sets, and you just start culling. You start details from everybody like that. And just the whole idea for Clive of being kind of a wannabe serious, And the more serious he was, the more I could put up the fader on all of his naivete, but he'd read every single book about Bergman, but had never seen a film probably. I always thought he was kind of an uninformed, naive Steven Spielberg meets Rupert Pupkin, There was a territory in there, so.
So I'm going to get to the next questions in the back, but since while I'm here, were there any moments during filming that mirrored the chaos depicted in the movie that you recall?
Same as last time.
I don't think so. I mean, yes, it's been a long time, but what I do remember is that the whole production went incredibly smooth. Like, we didn't have any delays or anything that didn't work, that we were like, where we were behind or anything like that. Mark, I don't know if you remember that, but I feel like it was I feel like we actually were pretty tight every single day. I thought we-
And the chaos helped too, like the chaos kind of helped that it was so short. Like I can't imagine shooting something like this over 8 months or something, you know? Like I don't think you could keep that frenetic chaos up and running over that kind of time. So it was nice that it was just like, where are we now? What are we doing now? What are we doing
Right.
now?
Working behind the scenes, I can tell you, I mean, it ran really smooth, but I mean, there was sort of like an organized chaos. I mean, it was like, I remember when we first started doing the production, everything, next thing you know, it was over and done with. But I mean, you're right, that's what kept us going. And I think that's what made the film a lot of fun to work on.
Our director of photography, who shot it, is Lee Daniel, and he had done. It was Richard Linklater who had made his first film, Slacker, and he was Richard Linklater's friend, and he shot Slacker. He was the DP on it. And when I saw Slacker, I thought, okay, this guy knows how to shoot a scene that can go long and can move from here and here and here and catch the close up on this and pull up and get to this, and he can make you feel like you're really in the real moment of it. And we had him, and so with every scene, it's like we would block everything out, but it's like we would be like, you have to hit this one, then hit this mark, then hit this mark. Because some of these scenes, you don't realize it, but it's like it's one shot going on for like 2 minutes. Like they're all arguing about the Coca-Cola, and it's like, you got to get up there, you got to get Moses, got to come down. They're going to argue. They're going to go this way, that way. He's going to quit. He's going to walk that way, and it all makes it seem like seamless like that. But he's moving in so many places that it keeps the reality of the scene going. And I think that was the trick, and that's why we were able to go so fast. Because when I would watch it on the monitor, I'd be like, that looks exactly like I've seen every piece of information I need to know for that scene to play down, because he just managed to really well hit everything. So there's very few cuts in it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and it just added to where he was very good at finding where the funny was, because you had to hit on those big long shots, like How Many Disciples and stuff. Like punchlines were important to hit in that dance,
Right. Like when the arc is coming in, it's like the whole pulling it in. Literally, it's one shot, but it's like, okay, you got to go from the AD who's just bring it in to these guys with the ropes. You want to pull that back. You need a shadow sort of coming in. You got to make sure you show the edge of the stage right as the arc hits it and stops. You get the idea that it doesn't fit, and so like. Yes, you could spend months trying to get all those shots and tell that story a different way, but the believability and then to pull it off in one shot. So I put a lot of credit on to Lee Daniel for pulling off that, making our days.
How much of that arc was actually
Good question. What you see is the only thing that existed. In other words, there was no second half. There was just the one part that you saw, the front of a bow. And when it hits the wall and stops, it's because there wasn't maybe more than another foot. That's as far as it could go. So it was just being pushed up against the wall this way because there was no arc on the other side. We had just put a big black flag so it looked like a shadow was rolling in. But it was just that piece. You literally see 100% of what was built, and nothing else was built.
I'd say that half was just impressive in and of itself. I mean, that seemed titanic. It seemed huge.
The sound sells it, I think.
Yeah.
Was it wood or was it like paper mache or what?
It was built like a house. Like no joke.
It worked out great. I remember thinking we could spend a lot of time, and this could not work, and this could suck, and we need this to work. And again, when I saw it all play out, I was like, I completely bought that,
Yeah, no, 100%. Is that your voice off camera when we hear them saying, you're the one that gets killed, or?
Yes, that's me.
Yeah, you have a little off-screen voice.
Yeah. So if you hear someone asking questions, or like, are you guys religious, or what are you? That's me asking all those questions. And again, it was to ground it in documentary feel, so that there's I liked in Spinal Tap that they had like Rob Reiner in it, but I wasn't going to be on camera or anything. But I felt like the presence of a documentary filmmaker in it grounds it.
Have you ever heard either directly or indirectly from anyone like Christopher Guest or Rob Reiner saying, that they saw the film and what they thought of And God Spoke?
I've heard that people really liked it through, hearsay. Michael Hitchcock, who plays the first AD, he went on to be in a lot of the Christopher Guest movies. I want to say, and I don't want to get, it may not be true, maybe I've, in my mind twisted it, but Christopher Guest saw it and didn't actually like it. But I did actually see on Facebook, somebody was talking about it, and somebody wrote in there Carl Reiner really liked this movie. So I thought that was great, because that's, I really, which of course I'm a fan of him and Rob Reiner and Spinal Tap, so I think that's great. But I do feel like every so often, for years after this movie came out, I would be on a set and people would quote the movie, and it was catching on in a way. I'm sure. Oh, actually, there is one other thing, which is one of the other writers on it was friends of my brother and I. It was Greg Malins and Michael Curtis. They went on to write for Friends, and one of the ways they got the job was that Matthew Perry had seen the movie and was a big fan of it, and had brought him on to introduce them to the rest of the Friends cast, and they wound up working their way up to becoming executive producers of Friends.
You'll hear a lot of anecdotes about people in film school, or even working professionals who just love the film so much that they bring their friends over and then they're watching it at home, and it just becomes very popular in both film school and also professional circles. So, which says a lot about this film. Let's take a couple more questions in the back. I know we had a few more.
Hello. So I saw this movie about 3 months ago, and I am a electrician, set lighting technician, and a grip. And I was introduced to this movie by a producer friend of mine, who his friend during the Lou Ferrigno Steadicam shots. That was his friend who was doing those shots for him. And he introduced it, and I watched the movie with some sound friends of mine. And I got a two-part question, to be quick. First off, when you have the Foley artist, the post guy, you can hear his pills.
Yeah.
And it ruins it. It's so great.
I actually don't, it wasn't until I just watched it just now that I was like, oh wait, where's the part where we say, what's that sound? And he goes, oh, I have my medication. I thought that was a scene in the
that
movie.
is in the movie. That is in the movie, yeah. So there was another edition, I watched it illegally, and it was kind of down-resed, but it had that line in it. So maybe there's a director's cut or something that's out there.
I noticed, I was like, I thought that was always in there. I don't know why it wasn't.
Some Foley artist got a hold of it.
Maybe. And the last question, as a grip, I really connected to Scooter. He was amazing. He really captured the heart of what it's like to work on set. And I missed him. Where did he go?
His name is Vinny, and he is a comic actor, and I've seen him in a bunch of stuff, on and off. I think we might be Facebook friends. I don't know exactly what he's doing now, but I remember, I always liked him. I thought he was a funny guy. And he did a great job on that. You see him, that's the other thing too. It's so many of those actors, because it's crew, they might have a little bit part, but then they're extras in the background throughout the entire movie. It's you constantly realize everyone keeps showing up again and again and again in the background. And he was always in a really good spot, right? Perfect for a cutaway.
I just want to say thank you so much. This movie was incredible. It really miss my indie roots. You go to work on big stuff, but then you see this, you're like, oh, this is beautiful. So thank you. And thank you guys for such incredible acting. That really brought it home. So thank you so much. And thank you again. This was wonderful.
When we posted this, just to promote the film, Vinny, the guy who plays Scooter, actually, acknowledged the film. He posted something in response to that. I'm the guy who plays the grip. And so, I don't know why he couldn't make it. He didn't say, but he was certainly welcome to. But he knew about it, so it was great. And also, Michael Hitchcock responded to the post as well. So just word got around. So it was kind of good that they acknowledged the film and had nice memories of it. And then we have another question in the middle.
Yeah. Did you have a storyboard?
No, we did not. What we did have is we had, you see the documentary being made, but at various points you then actually see the movie within a movie.
Right.
And so, you know, in the middle of shooting our documentary behind the scenes, we would have to take pieces in the day and actually film that stuff. So I had a friend, it was actually the guy that was, you know, he had no speaking part, but he was like the first assistant camera sitting next to Armand. But actually, that was a friend of mine who really was the cinematographer who was shooting those scenes then during the break. And I had given him storyboards, like, these are the 8 shots that you need to get at some point throughout the day while we're shooting all this other stuff. And then they had to be developed really fast and put together, and, you know, so we could have it like when we later on got to the part where they were watching dailies or something. So that was also happening. But no, there wasn't any storyboards beyond sort of the storyboards I laid out just for that stuff.
Great.
Well, I have a few more questions because we're kind of, but if anyone has any other questions, please, I'll ask one more time. You know, I want you to be able to ask questions from our guests up here. Are there any scenes or jokes that didn't make it into the final film that you wish had?
I'm sure there's a ton. The problem is that I don't remember them, but I do have one story that, Mark, I don't know if you remember this, but like there's the shot where you guys are like walking through this set, like, the production designer, the actor playing the production artist, is like showing you like sketches, and it's like, and Steven, you're like walking through, like not trying to get into the set, and like all the doors are locked. The idea was that you were supposed to try to open one of these doors, and then when you walk away, we were then going to have like somebody like poke their head out, and it was going to be, we just wanted a big famous director. So the joke was going to be, open the door, it's going to be a big famous director. And we were like trying to get someone like I want to say we were trying to get like Barry Levinson, who had like a movie going on the set at the time, and we couldn't get it. And somebody had said to us, "You know the guy who did Reservoir Dogs? We can get him." And I thought, but Pulp Fiction hadn't come out yet, and I was like, "Who's going to recognize some indie movie? Why would we want that?"
Quentin Tarantino, I was at a party, and he came up to me and said, "Hi, Stephen, how are you?" Like he knew me. Because he loved that movie. He did. He was really into that movie.
If only we had used him, you know, as a cameo. That moment would have been hilarious.
If you made the film today and God spoke, would you still have made it about the making of the Bible, or would there be some other modern filmmaking trend or issue that you would have satirized instead?
Good question. I mean, I think that this worked because the Bible inherently, just everyone sort of has the basis of that. Although 30 years later, I don't know, the sensitivity of the world today, of like, you know, the way certain jokes would go, I would say that it probably would have incorporated a lot of special effects. The idea of like special effects gone wrong, but like, and technology. But like at the time when we were making this movie, you know, there wasn't an internet yet, you know, there wasn't cell phones, so it's like, you know, everything is done with pencil and paper and everything, so it's its own time capsule, I think.
Yeah, and Stephen, you're a musician because you were really playing the accordion on there, so this is...
and they were singing.
Yeah. They were singing that, and I was very impressed. That was good. I should have brought the accordion.
Is that your song in the ending credits? You both singing?
Yeah. Woke up this morning with a pain in my heart. The lyrics are quite profound, actually.
You know, what had happened is he would bring the accordion, and sometimes he would play it, and then you have the scene where they were like recording their own soundtrack to it, and it was during editing. It was just going to normally go to credits, but then we, you know, the editor and myself, I was like, I wish we could just like keep the energy going. And she had said, well, look at this shot we have at the very end where the camera pans from people standing there to them and they applaud. And she goes, what if we ended with that? And then we just recorded the song and like backed into that as like the way to end the movie. And I was like, that's actually a really good idea. And so that's what it was. We had you guys record the song in full and then matched it to that last moment. And it was good. It was, you know, also I think spoke to like the characters, like, you know, carnival barkers, you know, shilling for whatever they can, you know.
Are there any final questions from the audience?
I just wanted you to know I'm a filmmaker and I'm in pre-production on movies, so there were parts that were so realistic I almost wasn't laughing. But I was just curious, how did you get Michael Medved to be in there? Because he's such a conservative critic. I was surprised to see him there.
I don't remember how I contacted him, but I did want a critic who could pan it, and Michael Medved at the time was a really outspoken critic, and I thought he was perfect to kind of like pan it. I want to say like we called him up and we came to his house and he gave us like an hour, set it up, he sat down, he just, and I had him do it both ways. I was just like, praise it and now pan it, and then I'm going to use the one that sort of fits, because there was a time when I was like, maybe I'll use it later in the film when it's like the very, very end when it's done. So but I don't know how we just sort of fell into him. And he just agreed to do it. So I was like, I'll be there in an hour. We just went there and shot it.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all. It's one of my favorite films of all times. Number two, I show it to everybody. Any chance I get, this is probably the only film I probably share with everybody. And I have to say, I've bought the film 10 times on VHS.
That was you.
It was me, because people would steal it from me. I would show it to them, and then I would go, and then the tape was gone. The DVD was gone. And so I had to keep buying it over and over again. And it really is because one of the major components is Stephen and Michael. You are so credible.
Yeah.
And your heart literally, it's not a mockumentary, your heart breaks for you. My wife is sitting here, this is the first time she saw the whole film, and she's squeezing my hand like, no, don't let it fail. Her heart's breaking because of your performance. But one of the things was, I didn't know this movie ever played in theaters. I only saw it in the video store, and I would see it a million times, and I hate to say it, the box turned me off for a while. Like, I did not want to rent this movie because it was in the vein of Spinal Tap, which I thought was okay. But it just was like, what is this film? I don't know what it is. And eventually, it broke me down. It was one of those things after you've rented so many times, something else, you're like, all right, I'm going to get this movie. It's in my face. I'm going to rent it. So my question is, did it have a theatrical run? Did it have distribution? And how did it do?
Great question. Yes, my brother and I had taken it around. It was at the Toronto Film Festival. It was at the Sundance Film Festival. We took it to the South by Southwest Film Festival, which was a brand new film festival, and we won the very first year. I don't even know, now it's a big thing. And eventually we wound up selling it to a company called Artisan Entertainment, which eventually became Live Entertainment, which eventually became Lionsgate. But here's something you need to know. They were going to release it, and when they bought the movie, they were very excited. I think it was, we're going to release it October of '94. It's going to be great. We're going to do a big marketing campaign. The problem is that in October of '94, there were 3 other indie movies that came out. One was Pulp Fiction, one was Clerks, one was Hoop Dreams, and then the movies in the box office from the studios was Shawshank Redemption. And we just got destroyed. We had no chance to gain any momentum because it was all Pulp Fiction, it was all Shawshank, and people were going nuts about Clerks and Hoop Dreams, and next thing you know, it was like, well, we'll just push it to video. So, it had a very short release. It just didn't stand a chance up against the momentum of those other movies.
Do you think, we have one more question there, but while we're getting the mic there, is there any chance, do you foresee this being released, getting a proper release on Blu-ray or 4K? I mean, I think it deserves it, and I think we need it.
Well, if there's anybody here who is from Lionsgate, I don't know. They have the rights to the film right now, and they own it. They could re-release it if they wanted to, or they could make a proper Blu-ray, or they whatever. The VHS tapes are pan and scan, whereas this was actually a full 185, which was goes back to the master. That's probably why the scene, now that I think about it, with the medicines not in it. Somewhere they must have added that in when they made that. But yeah, I'd love for it to have a resurgence on Blu-ray or something.
I think we should send them a copy of the Q&A to say, here, look, there's an audience, let's get it out.
I agree.
it's funny because that was very related to my question. As Arthur knows, I worked at Live Home Video in 1993 to 95. This is my favorite movie that ever came out from Live. I brought my VHS tape. And it has been, I'm an entertainment lawyer, it's been a huge cult classic in the industry. And I was thinking it needs to be a midnight movie. It really does, like as in your movie.
Yep.
So, I mean, I do know the people at Lionsgate, so we should talk.
I don't know the people at Lionsgate, so please feel free to reach out to them and give them that idea.
Yeah, I was going to ask you who had the rights and you had them back. So.
I don't think, no, I think they took them as relates to like North America for, perpetuity for themselves, but I think we still have like some foreign rights of places that didn't sell, as I recall, right, Mark? Yeah.
Well, one last question. What was Soupy Sales like to work with? Was he always on, or did he have a switch?
Yes, he was always on. And what's funny is like you couldn't write his jokes, so we had got him on the set, and he just thought the idea was really funny, and he would just give you jokes,
Just like that. Just like what you saw.
Which was great to try to be serious.
Right.
I love that.
Right, because Soupy isn't going to be serious, and when you put him in the beard and the makeup and everything, and then he's just being Soupy Sales, I think that's just funny.
Almost shared this question with both of you ahead of time, but I figured, I'll just I think it's kind of a nice way to end it and ask, if you could imagine Clive and Marvin 30 years after the filming of And God Spoke, what do you think they'd be doing today? Would they still be working together? And have they ever reunited to make the Iliad?
I've thought about this. Actually, I think Marvin joined, was the business administrator for that OSHA, the junkie cult leader in Oregon. And sorry, but if there was with all respect, it's not me, it's Marvin. And then he actually had a relationship with the girl with the snake. and she gave him herpes. I could go on, but...
Well, what was funny is when this screening first came up, Stephen called me and said, "This is what we're going to do." We had a Zoom, we hadn't talked for 25 years. We're going to be Clive and Marvin 30 years later. We'll come up and do the Q&A as them, we'll do a thing, I'll bring my accordion.
Live performer.
I said, I don't think I can do that.
I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Arthur Borman, Stephen Rappaport, and Michael Wiley from coming across the country and overseas just to be here.
Thanks, Sami. It was really beautiful, such generous and warm, wonderful. Thank you so much.
So thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Safe drive back to where
You guys are my heroes.